All right, good evening, everyone. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for tonight's shir. First, by thanking our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilson family of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all of the shiurim and drushos for Tafshin Pei, the year 5785 as a schus for Besoros Tovos for all of Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan, Stephen Terry Zinn, for dedicating all the shiurim and drushos this month in honor of the birth of their granddaughter, Devorah Eliana Zinn, and in memory of Dr. Zinn's father, Bunim Tzvi Ben Chaim Zichron Livracha, Shmuel and Rabin Karabkin, and the Schus Refuah Shalema for Binyamin Chaim Pesach Ben Moshe Chana, and commission of the yard site of Pesa Mira Bas Chaim Zichron Livracha. Dr. Moshe and Ann Ellen Gevant for dedicating the Shurim this month in memory of Dr. Gevant's parents, Yaakov Meir Ben Moshe Leib and Shena Bas Abba, and Dr. Bezat and Yamina Salfer of Los Angeles for dedicating the Shurim this month in memory of Refuah Shalema for Esther Bracha Bas Chaya. And our shir tonight is sponsored by David and Blimi Ehrenfeld, Le'ilui Nishmas Menachem Ben Yisrael Yaakov. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah, the families Zeinachama, all of those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Chol Yisrael. Chodesh Baruch Hu should Emir Hashem bring home our hostages, b'shalom and b'karov, and allow our holy soldiers to be successful, b'chol ma'aseh yedehem. So with that, let us begin. So tonight, we're going to spend a little bit of time speaking about Parshas Chayei. And there is much to discuss in this incredible parsha, so many incredible pieces. And, you know, it's interesting to note because we call the parsha Chayei because it discusses, well, Chayei sounds like it talks about the life of Sari Imenu. But of course, as you know, the parsha really has very little to do with the life of Sari Imenu and everything to do with the death of Sari Imenu. The real parsha that discusses the life of Sari Imenu was really Parshas Vayera. Last week's parsha was really where we saw just the full measure of Sari Imenu's life. So much dynamic activity on behalf of Sari Imenu. But nevertheless, parsha is called Chayei. So the Torah says as follows: Vayu Chayei Sarah, Mea Shana ve'Esrim Shana ve'Sheva Shanim Shnei Chayei Sarah. These are the years of Sari Imenu's life. 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years, the years of Sarah's life. So again, we're all familiar with the first Rashi. And Rashi points out over here the fascinating way in which the Torah records Sari Imenu's lifetime. It could have just said Sarah lived for 127 years. Why 100 years, 20 years, 7 years? So here Rashi explains to tell us that each of these intervals were significant. When she was 100 years old, she was as sin-free as she was when she was 20. Because the Gemara tells us that a person is not held accountable for their actions until the age of 20. So when she was 100, she was as sin-free as 20. And when she was 20, she possessed the innocent beauty of a 7-year-old. Beautiful Rashi. But if you look at the last line in number 2, I want to focus your attention on something a little bit different. Rashi says, Shnei Chayei Sarah. Now if you notice, there's a redundancy in the pasuk, right? Because the pasuk says, "Vayu Chayei Sarah." These are the years of Sari Imenu's life: 100 years, 20 years, 7 years. Shnei Chayei Sarah, the years of Sarah's life. That last phrase is totally redundant. Why do I need Shnei Chayei Sarah? Why do I need that phrase? These are the years of Sarah's life. You already told me, Vayu Chayei Sarah. Why do you need for that phrase? And Rashi adds in something amazing. Rashi says, Shnei Chayei Sarah, Kulan Shavin Letova. All of Sari Imenu's, literally, how would you literally translate? Kulan, all of them, Shavin were equal, Letova, in good. Now, so it sounds like Rashi saying all of them were good. Now, we already know from the outset, what doesn't that mean? I know that's a strange question to ask. What doesn't that mean? It doesn't mean that Sari Imenu's life was all good and easy and simple from the beginning. That's clear. Sari Imenu had a ridiculously difficult life. You know, one of the most important things to remember in general about great people, at least great people from Tanakh, is that they all have very hard lives. And this is incredibly important. And the truth is, it's not an accident. You know, we like to think sometimes in our youthful era of life, when we think that the world is black and white. So we like to kind of take an approach of saying, if you do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks of you, everything is going to work out. And what's the definition of everything working out? How do you define everything working out? What I want, right? In other words, so I do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks of me, and life goes exactly according to the plan that I have for myself. Okay, you commit averus, so life doesn't go exactly the way I wanted it for myself. And as we get older, we recognize that life doesn't play out that way. right? A person could do, quote unquote, everything right, and yet life goes in a variety of different directions. Conversely, sometimes you see people doing everything wrong, and it seems like everything's working out for them. We have one of the greatest theological conundrums is the concept of tzaddik v'ralo, rasha v'tovlo. The righteous suffer, bad things happen to good people, and yet somehow there are bad people who seem to enjoy a perfect and wonderful and happy life. How do you reconcile that? And what's the answer? We don't. Right? The answer is that this is one of the great mysteries of the world. Moshe Rabbeinu asked about it. Avram Avinu asked about it. Everyone asked about it. And at the end of the day, this is one of the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides and HaKadosh Baruch Hu regulates. So, and I think sometimes the stories of our great people are there in the Torah. If you notice, it's fascinating to see sometimes like the details, especially in Bereshis, that the Torah includes and the details that the Torah doesn't include. And there's so much in here that speaks to the day-to-day lives of the Avos and Imaos. And if you were to describe the lives of the Avos and Imaos in one word, what word would you use? One word. Difficult. They had difficult lives. And the Torah is trying to convey to us something incredibly profound, which is greatness only comes on the heels of difficulty. See, what's our greatest challenge? Our greatest challenge is we want greatness, but I want greatness without turbulence. Just like we want inspiration without effort, right? It's so interesting. I feel like I mentioned this. I don't know if it was in this year. I met someone actually at the rally in Washington, D.C. the other week. He said, "All right, Silver, I love your videos. They're so great. But can I make a request?" I said, "Sure. I'm all excited, of course. I'm thinking maybe there's a donation opportunity over here, right?" But he's like, "Can you really try to get everything under 2 minutes?" I was like, and so it was fast. So I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit startled by it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, because that's where we're holding, right? So where we're holding right now is I want inspiration, but I do not want to be bothered with a time commitment. So in other words, give me what I need and give it to me quickly. It's got to be like a YouTube short. So give me a YouTube short under 1 minute and I'm in. So why? Because deep down, what we're really saying is everybody wants inspiration and everybody wants connection, but I don't really want to work. I want to have it delivered to me, and I want to have it in a simple, easy, digestible form, and then I'm ready to take it. And that's beautiful, and that's wonderful. And Baruch Hashem, we do live in an age where that is available, which is really incredible. But it's important to understand that that's temporal, fleeting greatness. If you want real greatness in life, you have to be ready for adversity. Now, by the way, the other lesson that conveys is something amazing. When you find yourself in a difficult situation in life, so how do you look at that? How do you wrap your head around that? Whenever you find yourself in the midst of a difficult situation, know that the potential for greatness is within reach. Every difficult situation brings with it the promise of some type of dramatic, incredible, explosive growth. Think about this in just a moment. Think about your time of greatest bracha in life. Bracha is wonderful, right? We all love bracha, we all love simcha. But it's interesting, bracha and simcha rarely engender growth. They don't. It's not like anyone ever said, you know what, I got a bracha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I really don't think I deserved. I'm going to totally change my life around. Right? You don't really hear that. We get brachas every day. And we're like, okay, thank you, shkoyach, thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Or sometimes again, we can begin to take it for granted. But people rarely experience dynamic, cathartic, comprehensively life-changing growth through brachas. That's where challenge comes in. Challenge presents itself, and you have two choices. Well, you have three choices, right? Choice number one is just complain about it. Choice number two is drown in it. And choice number three is somehow manipulate and use it for some type of growth. And what's incredible to see is that the Avos and Imos, you think about this, you go through all of the Avos and Imos, and they had such beautiful and fulfilling and meaningful lives filled with challenge. And by the way, you could trace this, I've mentioned this before, Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, brings down, he says, in the world of literature, there are two types of stories. I've mentioned this before. It's one of my favorite ideas. Two types of stories. And what he says, there's two types of stories. There are fairy tales, and he calls like this mythology. So if you ever read like Greek mythology, so how do almost all Greek myths, they all have the same storyline, which is, Greek mythology was a polytheistic belief, so believed in many different gods, right? But their gods were very human. So they were driven by hubris and arrogance and lust and all these different things. So what would happen in Greek mythology, right? The man tries to do something, and then the gods pull the rug out from under them. Conversely, how does every single fairy tale end? And everyone lived happily ever after. Rabbi Sachs posits so beautifully, it's like, in Yiddishkeit, we do not believe in mythology because we believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants our success more than we want our success. But he says it's also important to understand, in Judaism, we do not believe in fairy tales. There is no one of our stories that ends and everyone lived happily ever after. There will be a story. That's the story of Mashiach. The story of Mashiach ends, everyone lived happily ever after. There is no other story in Yiddishkeit. And by the way, if you think about this, it's so tremendous, right? How does the Torah end? Death of Moshe Rabbeinu. Steps away from entering into Eretz Yisrael. It's the only thing he wanted. It's a tragic ending. On one hand, it's beautiful and uplifting because it's the end of an era and Klal Yisrael is about to enter into Eretz Yisrael, but it's a tragic ending. For me, where this becomes most pronounced, getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, is Purim. To me, I always found it so striking, right? The Megillah ends, and when I was in the Megillah ends, everybody starts singing Shoshanas Yaakov Tzalav V'Samecha. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. And you think about it for just a moment, that it's beautiful and wonderful for everyone except Esther, right? The heroine of the story is locked in a marriage to a man she does not want to be with, in a life that she does not want to live. And especially if you go with the narrative that Mordechai was her husband, and every single day she's seeing the man who she did marry, she wanted to live with. It's tragic. It's tragic. Yet again, that's the story of our salvation. Because the Klal Yisrael work the way we understand the worldview is that salvation comes from suffering. That growth comes from adversity. And sometimes it's like, no one really ever wants to hear that, because what we just want to hear is, just do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, and life is going to be beautiful and wonderful and rosy, and everything's going to work out okay. So you could tell yourself that story, but make sure just like you don't look around the world, because if you look around the world, that's not what happens. Life is filled with adversity, but adversity, and it might sound strange, could be a tremendous bracha, because adversity causes us to grow in ways that bracha never would. That is the blessing of, there's a woman, Sherry Mandel. If you remember again, her son, Kobe Mandel, was murdered in Tekoa. They live in Tekoa, in Eretz Yisrael, in the Shomron. And she wrote an incredible book called The Blessing of a Broken Heart. It is the most incredible, a bereaved mother. Her son was murdered. And she speaks about the power that is unleashed from a heart that is broken into multiple pieces. And that's power that you can't access with a whole heart. It's power that you can't even access with a heart that's filled with joy. It's a power that only comes out when the heart is broken into multiple pieces. Again, it's a lesson none of us want to live. And it's a lesson that none of us really want to accept, but nevertheless, it's a reality. So therefore, coming back to Rashi, right, at the end of source number 2, when Rashi says that Sari Imenu's life, Kulan Shavin Latova, can't mean that all of her days were good, because that's not true. Sari Imenu had a very difficult life. Sari Imenu suffered with infertility her entire life. Sari Imenu saw the man of her dreams having to marry another woman in order to go out and build that Abrahamic dynasty. Sarah did not speak with God, but yet again, Sari Imenu went, she left Haran, she left her homeland, she followed her husband to some who knows what. Remember again, she goes to Canaan, then they go to Mitzrayim. When she's in Mitzrayim, she's taken by Paro. Sarah was taken twice. Right? Sarah was taken twice, by Paro, by Avimelech. Now again, through miraculous intervention, nothing happened to her, but again, I don't think we could in any way minimize the trauma just of being taken. Just of being, even if physically she wasn't hurt or abused, just that trauma of being taken is overwhelming. And this was Simon in his life. So Kulan Shav Latova can't mean that all of her days were good in that her life was easy, because her life was absolutely not easy. So what does it mean when it says Kulan Shavin Latova? That they were all equal for good. So I want to share with you 2 approaches. The first is the Al-Shech. And this is really, this Al-Shech in number 3 is absolutely beautiful. So the Alshich writes as follows. He says, "Hine yadanu mechachmei ha'emes ki Avram v'Sara bo'u l'takin es asher ifsu adam v'chava." So this is a profound construct that the Alshich is creating over here. He creates a parallel between Adam and Chava and Avraham and Sarah. And he posits that Avram and Sarah came to fix everything that Adam and Chava broke. Incredible. He goes on, he says, listen to this. Why? So the Medrash asks, why wasn't Avram created as the first man? It seems like such a better choice, right? Avram could have introduced all of humanity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so why wasn't he created first? Mipnei shemashe kilkel adam ba Avram v'tikein. V'im haya nivra hu tchila mi yitakin Avram kinei litakin ba Avram. This is because Avram's entire tachlis was to fix that which Adam Harishon broke. And if Avram was born before Adam, then who would have cleaned up Adam's mess? So first of all, just a profound idea that Avram and Sarah were here to go ahead and fix everything that Adam and Chava broke. V'hu, ki Adam v'Chava, listen to this, ki Adam and Chava heviu misa la'olam. For example, Adam and Chava brought death to the world. Right? When they went ahead and they ate from the Eitz Das Tov, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they brought death to the world. V'Avram v'Sarah heviu chayim la'olam. So whereas Adam and Chava brought death to the world, Avram and Sarah brought life to the world. How did they bring life to the world? Spiritual life. Because they introduced the Ribono Shel Olam to or introduced humanity to the Ribono Shel Olam. Eilu garmu klala, ve'eilu nivracha b'cha. Adam and Chava brought curse to the world, klala, and Avram and Sarah brought bracha. Adam silek shchina al rakia, ve'Avram v'Sarah horidu merakia shavi. So Adam caused the divine presence to depart from this world and to ascend into the heavens, and Avram and Sarah brought HaKadosh Baruch Hu back down into this world. Adam and Chava corrupted the soul, and Avraham and Sarah went ahead and purified the souls of so many. Shneimar es hanefesh asher asu b'charon. Elu achlu ve'chilu mashe mevi misel ha'olam ve'elu achlu ve'chilu mashe mevi chayim. This is incredible. Adam and Chava ate, and through eating brought destruction upon the world. Avram and Sarah opened up their tent, fed strangers, and through food brought spirituality to the world. Good. So therefore, interestingly enough, according to the Alshich, what you see is something amazing. Avram and Sarah did something truly amazing, which was they had this, we'll call it life of simultaneity. They had two simultaneous tracks happening in their lives. On one hand, their avoda was to fix the past. They came into a world that was profoundly broken because of what occurred before them, and they had a mission to fix the past. And simultaneously, they also had an obligation to build the future. Fix the past, build the future. Identify what's broken, repair it, and after you finish repairing what has been corrupted, then build something beautiful going forward. And perhaps what Rashi's saying when Rashi says, Kulon Shavin Litova, means that Sarah Imenu maintained a constant and consistent mission her entire life. We're going to talk more about this in just a moment. Sometimes people only discover like their tachlis or their mission later on in life, and there are other people who discover why they're here and what they're meant to do much earlier on. Sarah Imenu was one of those people who understood what her mission was early on in life. And this mission had this duality. There are things that happened before me that broke the world. I have an obligation to repair them. And at the same time, I have to be singularly focused on building a beautiful future. So the Alshich points out about how she was able to repair, right? Everything that Adam and Chava broke, Avram and Sarah repaired. So that was her commitment to repairing the past. What about the future? So understand something. We can see this. I don't know if we quoted this last week's share. I don't think I did. Maybe 2 weeks ago I mentioned it. There's something very interesting that happens when Sarah realizes that she's not having children. So she goes to Avram and she suggests to Avram that he should take Hagar. Take Hagar. Now, by the way, it just happens as an aside, it happens to be fascinating. Avram never brought this up. Avram never brought this up with Sarah. He never said anything, which is interesting because if you're right, Avram Avinu, so what's your plan? Do you want to have children? You want to have a future? So what's the plan? Rabbi Soloveitchik points out something very interesting. Rabbi Soloveitchik has a number of essays on marriage. And he writes about the essence of marriage. He says that in certain cultures that the entire purpose of marriage was procreation. That's it, to produce future generations. He says in Judaism, there is a level of marriage. Of course, there's period of Arivia, of course, is procreation. That's a major component. But there's also a level of relationship and companionship that is separate and distinct from procreation. And he quotes this from Avram and Sarah. This idea that Avram Avinu, it never dawned on him to take another wife. It's fascinating. It never dawned on him. Remember, in biblical, you have to understand something. Rashi points out that in biblical times, it was common for men to marry, well, it was common for men to marry more than many women, but it was common for sometimes one woman was more fertile than the other. So there would be one wife who would be like the childbearing wife, and then there's the other wife. I have no idea how that plays out, like in Shalom bias dynamics, right? But Lamaisa, different times, different whatever it was, right? So it's fascinating to point out that Avram never had a Havamina. Like it just never dawned on him. Well, Sarah doesn't have children. I have to marry someone else. He doesn't say anything. He's like, you're my partner. This is our life. Hakadosh Baruch Hu decides who has children and doesn't have children, but my life is with you. You're my partner. So whatever does or doesn't happen, we experience it together. Just by the way, that partnership motif in Avram and Sarah's life really comes to it in this week's parasha because it's fascinating to note. After Sarah Imenu dies, what does Avram Avinu accomplish? What does Avram do after Sarah dies? Nothing. Pretty much nothing, right? If you think about it, Avram dies at the end of this week's parasha, also Parshas Chayei Sarah. Avram does two things over the course of this week's parasha, which is he marries off Yitzchak, which he himself didn't do, right? Remember again, he dispatches Eliezer to do it, and the Torah points out that he actually does remarry after the death of Sarah, and he marries a woman named Keturah. What Rashi points out was Hagar. He remarried Hagar. And again, Rabbi Soloveitchik points out that it's fascinating to see that Avram Avinu doesn't engage in any dynamic activity after the death of Sarah Imenu. Because without his partner, he wasn't the same. And remember, understand the contrast. This is Avram Avinu who's running around everywhere, right? Converting people, preaching, right? Delivering drushas. Avram Avinu was able to keep it under 2 minutes also in his video. So I'm sure it's very popular, right? So the man again, he was doing all these things, and now suddenly Sarah dies, and he's done. That was the nature of their relationship. So just to show you this idea, so Avram, the relationship dynamics are incredible. So Avram is singularly committed to Sarah. And Sarah is singularly committed to Avram. But Sarah is not just committed to Avram, Sarah is committed to an Abrahamic future. So when she feels that she is not going to give Avram a child, she says to him, you need to marry Hagar. We got to keep our eye on the ball. We got to keep our eye on the future. The goal is to create a family. The goal is to create a destiny. Without progeny, without a future, everything we've worked for goes with us to the grave. There has to be a next generation to carry on our holy work. So it's Sarah's commitment to a singular vision of perpetuating an Abrahamic dynasty that says marry Hagar. And by the way, the Gemara points out, Avram says, I'll marry her, but I think I mentioned this last week. Avram says, I'll take her as a pilegesh, as a concubine. Without getting into technicalities, there's two constructs of biblical marriage. There's marriage, and then there's pilegesh, a concubine. There are differences. They're both marriage-like, but they have differences. Avram did not want to take Hagar as a complete wife. Sarah said, if you're going to go ahead and marry her, you have to do it right. Take her as a full-fledged wife. Sarah Imenu, and this is what the Ashach is saying. Do you want to know the greatness of Sarah Imenu? What does it mean, Kulan Shav and Latova, all over years for good? Sarah Imenu had a singular focus on what needed to get accomplished. And Sarah would not get distracted. That's what it means, kulan shavin latova. She knew that her life had this duality of mission. I have to partner with Avram and repair that which Adam and Chava broke. It's our job to repair it. And I have to partner with Avram in order to go ahead and build a beautiful future. And whatever sacrifices I need to make in order to build that future, I am ready to go. I am ready to do. It's singular focus. Do you know what our greatest contemporary challenge is? Our greatest contemporary challenge? If I were to ask you, what is our greatest contemporary challenge? Right? We're distracted. Right? We're distracted. Think about this for just a moment, right? You're starting, right? You're going ahead, you're working on something. Then what happens? What happens? Come on, we all know what happens. Right? Your phone beeps. Your phone beeps. And you can't, one thing I know for sure, no one's calling me for the nuclear codes, right? That's for sure, right? So whatever it is, it probably, but yeah, we jump, and then, okay, I'm just gonna check this, and then you go back. And how many times in life does it happen that I just never end up really getting back to the thing that I started with? Or even if I get back to it, my attention is already in a million different places. We're so distracted. Now, what is the collateral damage of being distracted? The collateral damage of being distracted is we think that we accomplish so much more because we can multitask, right? I'm not going to take a show of hands about how many people have been on a Zoom meeting and answering emails at the same time, right? So you know that when you do that, right? First of all, you have absolutely no idea what the Zoom meeting was about, right? And also the emails generally, again, I don't even remember what I was doing with the emails. Nothing is really 100%. Everything is 50%, 60%, 70%. So I'm so proud of myself because just in the course of an hour, I got a meeting in and Baruch Hashem, I answered 72 emails. Fantastic, excellent. But sum total, what did I accomplish? And by the way, everyone knows when you're answering emails, right? Everyone knows, right? Because you're the person who have to ask you, right? Chaim, you hear what we're saying? Yeah, look up. Hey, so we think, there's the famous mice of Mendel of Rimanov. Mendel of Rimanov said he lamented the days when they paved the roads. That's what he said. He said, why? Because it used to be before the roads were paved, you would travel by day and you would have to check into the inn at night. So you'd have time to daven, to eat dinner, to speak with people. He said, now that they paved the roads, people could travel by day and by night, and no one will have time for anything. So Rabbi Dr. Abraham Tversky, who used to quote this idea, and he said, can you imagine if Mendel of Rimanov were alive today? Right? He lamented the paving of the roads, but it's so important, right? And I want to be clear: this is not a technology, Shmuz. That's not because it really has nothing to do with technology. It's been a human condition that we get. You think it's a new thing that people are distracted? Human beings are distracted. We're easily distracted. The challenge of being distracted is you lose singular focus, and when you lose singular focus, you don't get to accomplish the things you need to do in life. And that's why, by the way, just you should know, if you ever muster up the courage to shut off your phone for 1 hour and devote yourself to whatever task you have to be, it's amazing how productivity goes through the roof. Or shut off the notifications. Again, not a technology shmooze, just a life shmooze. Kulan shavin latova means, you know what the greatness of Sarah Imenu was? Singular focus. She didn't get distracted. From the time she was young until the day that she died, she knew exactly what her life mission was. This duality of mission. Fix the past and make sure that you ensure that there is a future. Kulan shavin latova means she lived a life of singular focus. To give you another illustration of this, and this is incredible. Take a look at number 4. And number 4, the pasuk says, there's actually a very, very beautiful pasuk. So fast forwarding in the parsha a little bit, Eliezer brings back young Rivka. And this is the first encounter between Yitzchak and Rivka. Yitzchak meets Rivka, Yitzchak ha'ola Sarah imo. Yitzchak Avinu brought Rivka into the tent of Sarah, his mother. Vayikach es Rivka, vatila li'isha vayehavel. He married Rivka, she became his wife, and he loved her. By the way, first time that love is mentioned in the Torah. First time that love between a man and a woman is mentioned in the Torah is Yitzchak and Rivka. Love is not mentioned between Adam and Chava. Love is not mentioned between Avram and Sarah. first time love is mentioned is by Yitzchak and Rivka. Again, we see it again afterwards by Yaakov and Rachel. But the first time is Yitzchak and Rivka. There's a lot to say about that, also about why love appears here and what this love means. It's also fascinating to note, by the way, if you look in the progression of the pasuk, when does love occur? When does love occur? After marriage. It's a pretty incredible idea. Very much against the way we think in Western society about the notion of falling in love. You could fall in lust, but you cannot really fall in love. You could fall in love after you're married. When you're in a relationship and you're giving to someone and you're doing for someone and you're living with someone and you're experiencing life with someone, love is created through that. But it's fascinating. So, they did just meet over here, right, in this pasuk. So this was, they met, they got married, and then again, but it's fascinating to see marriage first, and then true love comes afterwards. But what I want to draw your attention to is something interesting. Remember, Sarah already passed away. Right? So Sarah never got to meet Rivka. But what's fascinating, even though Sarah died, but yet again, what's still standing? Her tent. So the question that the Mefarshim try to understand is, why is Sarah's tent up? Remember again, just biblically speaking, Avram had a tent and Sarah had a tent. Right? Because again, we know this because it's called Ha'ohela Sarah Imo. It's Sarah's tent. If it was Avram's tent, it would have said he brought her home to meet Avram. But Davke brings her in to meet Sarah. So Sarah had her own tent, whatever this means. So Sarah died. If Sarah died, why is her tent still standing? So the Ramban points out to her something very beautiful. The Ramban writes, he says, "Vayivia Yitzchak hola Sarah imo chaser nismach k'moravim v'tama kasov ki yisaber b'chvod shenahag Yitzchak bi'imo ki me'es shemesa Sarah lo nata alo." This was done out of kavod. Yitzchak had kavod for his mother, and out of kavod and deference to his mother, he did not take down her tent. He did not take down her tent. Right? This is that there's so much here. I'll say all these questions, so much to unfold. Remember again, Yitzchak, of course, was not there when his mother died, right? And Yitzchak also, I'm sure, understood that Sarah Iminu's death was also tied in with the entire episode of the Akedah. So again, Yitzchak, obviously longing for his mother, missing his mother, naturally so, leaves up the tent as like a testament to her, for covered out of her. Ki amrulo savo isha cheres el oel gvira nechbedes. V'kasher ra Rivka heviu el oel ahu lechvoda v'shal nekachas. This is incredible. So the Ramban says something amazing. The Ramban says that Yitzchak did not let anyone else into his mother's tent. No one was allowed to go into Rivka's tent. It's Sarah's tent. This was Sarah's tent. It was her place, and he left it up out of cover for his mother. But then the Ramban says something amazing. Look at the last line, number 5. V'kasher ra'a Rivka, but when Yaakov met Rivka, hevia el ha'oelahu lichvoda v'sham likacha. Isn't something beautiful? Do you know where the chasana between Yitzchak and Rivka took place? You know where it was? It was inside the tent of Sarah Imenu. So somehow when Yitzchak met Rivka, he saw that this girl, that this young woman, was obviously something special, was something unique, and she was the first person to enter into Sarah Imenu's tent since the death of Sarah Imenu. And therefore, again, and that's where they marry, representing this idea that Yitzchak saw the qualities in this young woman that she could be the next of the matriarchs, brings her into Sarah Imenu's tent, marries her there. So according to the Ramban, the tent was left up ultimately, again, as a testament to Sarah Imenu. It could also be that having the tent left up, leaving the tent up, is not just simply like a memorial or like a shrine or like a coven. A home, right, which the tent of Sarah, the home of Sarah, a home in general, represents your ideals. A home represents your, right? If you want to see who a person really is, where do you go? You go into their house, right? You could tell a lot about people, right? You walk into someone's house, you could tell a lot about people, right? What does the house look like? Right? How do they run their home? How do people talk to each other inside of the house? What's the general behaviors? So actually, there's a beautiful medrash. Take a look at number 6. The medrash writes, this is incredible. V'lo od ela koros beiso shel adam va'avana me'idin alav. You know, after 120, when we leave this world and we go up to Beis Din Shalmala. So do you know who comes to testify about us right before the heavenly tribunal? You know who comes to testify? The walls and the boards and the stones of our home. Right? Why do they come? Why do they come? Because they see the real me. See, the great part is when I go into the world, I could put on a whole new facade, right? And I could put on a great show. And by the way, we all do it. We all do it, right? There's the inside face and there's the outside face. And the outside face is good, it's polished, it's serene, it's kind, it's charitable, it's frum, all these different things. But when I go behind closed doors and no one else is there, that's the real me comes out. The real me comes out. And therefore the Medrash says, the incredible Medrash, that after 120, when I'm standing before the Beis Din Shalmala, the heavenly tribunal, giving an accounting of my life, who does the Beis Din Shalmala summon, so to speak, just for character reference, for who I really was? The walls of my home. Because the walls of my home saw me in a way that the rest of the world did not. The walls of my home saw the real me. They know who I really am and what I really am behind closed doors. So what you begin to see is something amazing. When the home sees the real you, the home represents the real you. The home, so the tent of Sarah perhaps, the tent of Sarah was left up. Why? Not simply as a memorial to her, not simply out of covet to her, but it was Yitzchak and Abraham's way of ensuring that Sarah Imenu's ideals remained embedded with the family, even though she was no longer here, right? You know, deep down, the scariest part of death, right? What's the scariest? I don't mean of us time when we lose loved ones. The scariest part of death is a fear of forgetting. You know, in fact, the Gemara says that there's a gzeira. The gzeira min hashamayim, she'ames nishtachach min alev achar yud beis chodesh. The dead are forgotten after 12 months. Now, that's not literal, because anyone who's experienced loss knows you don't forget about people you love after 12 months. But what it means is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu programmed us with different coping mechanisms. Person endures loss, they think life is over, nothing's ever going to be the same, and then something amazing happens, which is we adapt. We adapt and we pivot, and there's a special adaptation that occurs after 12 months that allows for a certain shift in perspective that allows a person to move forward. But sometimes there's a fear. Sometimes there's a fear in being able, you hear this, sometimes you see this with Rahman al children who lose parents when they're young. The child is young, lose their parents. Sometimes one of the most tragic things is when a child says, I can't remember what my parents' voice sounded like. Or again, I can't remember, I could see pictures of my parent, but like when I close my eyes, I can't conjure up like a memory of what my parent looked like. Sometimes even greater than death is the fear of really losing that connection with your loved one. And it could very well be that Avraham and Yitzchak had this same fear as well. So what do? They leave up Sarah's tent. Because Sarah's tent was not simply, again, a memorial, not simply that shrine, but Sarah Imenu's tent, the home, represents your ideals. The home represents who and what you are. So they left up Sarah's tent, so that's who Sarah was as a person, right? Sarah was no longer there with them physically, but who Sarah was, what she represented, bless you, what she believed in life, those things would remain with the family. And it's incredible to see that in the tent, you see who Sarah Imenu really was. How? Take a look at number 7. So the pasuk says something amazing. So remember again, we're going back and forth a little bit in the parasha, so I apologize for the ping-ponging a little bit, but we're going back a little bit now. So remember again, this is after the birth of Yitzchak. So Sarah sees Yishmael behaving inappropriately, and she's worried about the impact that is going to have on Yitzchak. So what happens? What does Sarah mean to say in number 7? Pasuk Yud. V'tamar le'Avram, Garesh ha'ama hazos v'espina, ki lo yirash im ben ha'ama hazos im beni im Yitzchak. So Sarah says, you need to get rid of Yishmael and Hagar. Kick him out of the house. I can't have them here, because if we're going to raise a Yitzchak, if we're really going to raise a child, B'kedusha, B'tar, and create the future, I cannot have a Hagar and Yishmael here. So the pasuk Yud Aleph, number 7, pasuk Yud Aleph. Vayera Adav Ma'obein Avram, Al Dos Beno. So Avram Avinu, of course, is very distressed. Remember again, Avram Avinu's whole life mission is what? His whole life mission is bringing people closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now you want me to kick out my own son? It doesn't make any sense. Vayomer Elokim el Avram, Al yira be'einecha ala nar v'al asecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervenes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervenes. The Ribono Shel Olam intervenes in a shalom bayis Yisrael. Avram and Sarah having a disagreement, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervenes, and he says, Avram, first of all, don't worry about Yishmael and Hagar. They're going to be fine. Kol asher tomar elecha Sarah shma bekola. Whatever Sarah says to you, whatever she says to you, listen to her. Ki b'yitzchak yikar lecha zara. Which, by the way, is a very sweeping statement, right? Whatever Sarah says to you, listen to her. So the shaila is, why? Why should Avram listen to Sarah? So Rashi points out besides the fact that God told him to, but Rashi says in number 8, Shema v'kola lamadnu shahaya Avraham tafel l'Sarah b'nevius. So Rashi says, you see from here that in fact Sarah was a greater prophetess than Avram. Sarah, greater nevuah than Avram Avinu. What's the problem with the Rashi? What's the problem? What's the problem with saying that Sarah was a greater Navi than Avram? There is not one recorded episode of HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to Sarah. Not one recorded episode. So now Rashi pulls this out that Sarah, was a greater prophetess than really? Really? There's no recorded episode. Now in general, it happens to be, biblically speaking, you often won't find HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to women. The Gemara feels that it's a form of tznius. Like Miriam was an Aviyah. The Chazal tells Miriam was an Aviyah, yet we don't find HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to Miriam, much in the same way, by the way, that Miriam, the Chazal tells us, Miriam died a misas neshika. So misas neshika means a death with the kiss of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is a painless, quick death. That's how Avram Avinu died. The Gemara compares it to pulling a hair out of milk. There's no friction, there's no turbulence. A person just simply, what's the right word? Passes. A person just transitions. So that's how Aaron died. And Moshe and Miriam yearned for that same type of death. So the Gemara says that Miriam died that way also, but it would be inappropriate to say that Miriam died alpin neshika, like the imagery, because Chosh Baruch was referred to in the male. So ultimately, the reference to Miriam dying with a kiss of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so Chazal felt, Chosh Baruch Hu felt in the Torah, that it wouldn't be, okay, so you could say maybe Sarah prophesied many times, maybe it did happen, had just never recorded it, but it'd be strange, never ever recorded once in the Torah. So look at the Emek Davar. The Emek Davar says in number 9 something amazing. Then it's Siv. He says, Shma bekola, velo amar shma likola, shamashmo shiyasa kidvareh, koloshna mikro le'el, v'isha avram lekol sarai, aval bikola, masho shidakti visvorim b'dvareh. So this is incredible. So then Siv says something amazing. Siv says, Hashem is, see, everyone reads this, and we think, what's the takeaway message of the pasuk? What's the takeaway message of the pasuk? For all generations, what's the takeaway message of the pasuk? Come on, this is a women's shir. You should be jumping all over this, right? Right? In other words, what's the takeaway message of the pasuk? Do whatever your wife tells you, right? The Netziv says, but that's not what it says. If it wanted to say that, it should have said, Kol asher tomar lecha Sarah, shma likola. Listen to her voice. Bikola, says the Netziv, is Avram, you need to listen to what she's saying. Sometimes you could hear what someone's saying, or you could listen to what someone's saying. So Avram, listen, understand what she's trying to tell you, because Sarah's onto something. Sarah understands something that you do not understand, right? It's not telling simply Avram, just listen to Sarah. It's not the Ribono Shel Olam intervening in a shalom bayis. Christ is saying, just stop and listen to your wife. Chosh Baruch was saying, Avram, Sarah is making an incredibly valid point, and you need to try to understand the point that she's making. So what is the point? Look at number 10, Lubavitcher Rebbe. Lubavitcher writes, he says, Kan aleinu lahavchin bein Sarah lebein Avram. So the Rebbe says, from here you see one of the most fundamental distinctions between Sarah and Avram. Sarah haisa imo shel Yitzchak bilvad. Sarah had one role. I mean, she didn't have one role, she had multiple roles. But in this context, her one role was, she was the mother of Yitzchak. Me'az hivaldo, shafa shashef aloki yufne rak elav. I'm just reading a little bit more. Avram hayagam avian shel umos acheros Yishmael b'nei Keturah. Right. So Sarah Imenu had one mission. What was her one mission? I need to raise a Yitzchak to be not only the biological heir, but the spiritual heir to Avram Avinu. That is my job. That is my mission. Avram Avinu, on the other hand, had many children. He had Yishmael. He fathered a whole number of children with Keturah at the end of the parasha, go on to many nations. And more than that, Avram Avinu is also a spiritual father. Remember again, it's important to recognize all of the major faiths, right? Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all trace themselves back to Avram Avinu. So Avram is the father of all the major faiths in the world. So Avram Avinu was like a humanity personality. Sarah Imenu has one singular focus, which is her child. Her child. My job is to allow this child to become the best version of himself. My job is to allow this child to self-actualize. My job is to ensure that this child is ready to fill the shoes of his father, not just to fill the shoes, but to build upon the foundation of his father in order to ultimately build out Klal Yisrael. That is my one and only goal, says Sarah Imenu. Now, we know it's not really her one and only goal. Sarah Imenu wore many different hats. She was also an influencer, right? A biblical influencer, right? And she was also, again, a dedicated partner to Avram Avinu. She wore many different hats and had many different roles. But in this respect, Sarah Imenu says, I know what has to get done. And I'm singularly devoted to this task of raising a Yitzchak. Avram, you're great, don't get me wrong, you're fantastic. But Avram, you're all over the place, right? You're saving the world, fantastic, shkoyach, go Team Avram, right? Fantastic. But at the end of the day, right now, Avram, you need to do one thing, and that is get out of my way and do what I tell you to do. I hear this all of the time, by the way, right? Get out of my way, and I'm gonna do, and I accept it lovingly because it's almost always true. Right? Get out of my way, and I need to do what I need to do. And Chaburah Baruch Hu says, get out of her way and let her do what she needs to do. Why? Because she understands what has to get done. You don't. Avram, your heart is in the right place, but you're Av Hamon Goyim, you're a father of a multitude of nations, right? You're here for, you're not even like a Klal Yisrael Jew. You're a humanity monotheist. You're here to infuse everyone with holiness and spirituality. Shkoyach, Hatzlocha, it's fantastic. But Avram, to be honest, you don't know how to make a Yitzchak. Sarah knows how to make a Yitzchak. Isn't this incredible? Sarah understands that a Yitzchak is only created in a home and in an atmosphere of Kiddusha. So Sarah Imenu understands that if there's a Yishmael there, right? Having a Yishmael was the equivalent of just allowing every single type of influence into your home. Right? This is a common issue, even contemporarily, right? Parents allow their children access to a whole variety of different things. And then I wonder, why isn't my kid interested in Yiddishkeit? Why is this? Why is that? Well, what are they watching? And what are they doing? And what are they reading? And what are they seeing? And what are they possessing? So of course you can't create a Kaddish child if you don't house them and nurture them in an incubator of Kiddusha. It doesn't work. You can't expose your child to everything and then expect them to somehow find the strength to choose Kiddusha over everything else that's out there in the world. So Avram Avinu says, essentially, Yitzchak will be fine. Yishmael's not so bad. It's good. Life is all about learning to live with other kinds of people and different influences, and it's only going to make him stronger. And Sarah's like, just be quiet. Just be quiet. Just be quiet. You're wrong. I appreciate what you're saying. I really do. But here, you're wrong. You know how to inspire humanity. You don't know how to raise an inspired son. Right? It's incredible. You know how to shape greater society. You do not know how to raise an inspired child. And Sarah Imenu says, I do. And what that needs is a little bit of a cocoon. And what that needs is a little bit of isolation. And what it needs is that the home has to be that incubator of Kiddusha. Home has to be a safe space that is filled with holiness, that is filled with greatness, and that is filled with a constant sense of devekis to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if there are other alien influences that seep in there, that is going to erode the traction and growth of Yitzchak Avinu. So therefore, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's what the Lubavitcher Rebbe is saying. So this was, and it's fascinating, as much as they were partners, Sarah couldn't do what Abraham did. Right, so it wasn't the person to go out and influence all of humanity, but yet amazingly enough, Avram couldn't do what Sarah did either. And perhaps if we bring this all together, right, this is why they left the tent. What does the tent represent? The tent is the home. The home represents, like Zon the Medrash, the home represents the real you. What was the real Sarah Imenu? The real Sarah Imenu was a mother who was fiercely dedicated to the creation of an inspired next generation. The Sarah Imenu, her singular focus was, how do I get a Yitzchak from birth to death, constantly inspired, constantly holy, ready to take over his father's spiritual enterprise and bring it to the next level. And that's perhaps what it means at the end of the day of Kulan Shavin Latova. When Rashi says, Shnei Chayei Sarah, all of Sarah Imenu's years were all good. Remember, like we said, good doesn't mean easy. Good means that she had a singular focus. All of her years, she had a singular, positive, good focus. And what was that positive, good, and singular focus? It was to build a beautiful and holy future for Avram Avinu. Now, interestingly enough, that focus took on different directions at different times, right? In the beginning, she thought it was going to be through Hagar. Then it didn't work out through Hagar. Then she was blessed with Yitzchak. And once it was with Yitzchak, I got it. I know what I have to do. I know I have to insulate. I have to protect, and I have to nurture. That was Sarah Imenu. And she ingrained that within her family to such an incredible degree that even when she died, they left the tent up because the tent represented Sarah's commitment to family and Sarah's unyielding commitment to the creation of holy and inspired family. And it was so fierce, and it was so intense, and it was so passionate that even when she died, they could not bear to take down her home. So if you bring all of us together, with this we'll conclude. So it turns out that when the pasuk says that Shnei Chayei Sarah Kulan Shavin Latova, really that's teaching us that Sarah Imenu lived life with a profound singular focus. What was a singular focus? So two different approaches, the Al-Shich, and we'll call it the second approach. The first approach to the Al-Shich is that Sarah Imenu saw that her divine purpose in this world was this twofold idea. Number one, fix that which was broken in the past. Identify all that Adam and Chava broke and find the courage to repair it, right? So that simultaneity of repairing the past, building the future. And from her entire life, from the time that she was young to the time that she died, that was her only focus. And approach number two, her singular focus was the creation and the building of a beautiful, inspired family. And she recognized that the only way that's going to happen is if I'm singularly focused on it. If I'm distracted, or if the home gets distracted in any way, it's not going to happen. Yitzchak will be good. Yitzchak will be nice. He'll be fine. But she had a choice, and she recognized I could either raise a Yitzchak or I could raise a Yitzchak Avinu. Once there's in a Yitzchak and a Yitzchak Avinu, like most things in life, it all boils down to a mother, right? A distracted mother could build a Yitzchak. A singularly focused mother could build a Yitzchak Avinu. And ultimately, again, the Kulan Shavin Latova represents Sarah Imenu's singular focus to this holiest of tasks. What's the takeaway for us? So there's many beautiful takeaways for us, both in terms of family, both in terms of children, but I think kind of like Big Adol, in a more general sense, I often feel the takeaway from this is, so often in life, we only figure out what we're supposed to do when we get older. Now, some of that is just life maturity, right? When we're young, we're just kind of all over the place. And it's only when we kind of calm down a little bit and get older that we recognize the direction we have to go in. But a lot of times in life, we don't figure out what we're really supposed to be doing because we're distracted, because we're just literally all over the place. And I think what Sarah Imenu teaches us is the need sometimes to achieve some level of inner quiet. In Chassidus, there's the concept of hisbodedus, of being alone with oneself, right? I mean, you don't have to sit cross-legged and start humming or anything, but the idea of just clearing your mind a little bit, shutting everything off, being alone with yourself, like the Ramchal writes, Ma chovaso ba'olamo. What is my obligation in this world? Why am I here? Why am I here? What am I doing in life? What's my tachlis? It can't just be to acquire. It can't just be to enjoy. What is it that I am supposed to do? Because if I could figure that out, and by the way, that thing could change many times over the journey of life. It could be accomplishing and then move on to something else, or it could be multiple things. But if I could figure it out, then I could put my singular focus. And once I put that singular focus upon the objectives and goals of life, there is no telling what we can accomplish. I'll stop over here for tonight. Shkayach, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.